Hey, check 1, 2, motherfucking 3.
Quick test for you as well.
Test, motherfucking 3.
That's it. We in here.
All right, well, y'all are recording.
We're recording right now.
Yeah, whatever's comfy. Just hop in.
I'm going to tell you, thank you for coming right now, okay? I really appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Whew.
It's an honor.
No, the honor is all mine, trust me. Welcome to the Follow D Money podcast. I'm your host, Stretch, aka D Money. This week, I have a young lady on my podcast who I find to be pretty remarkable in what she does. She runs her own company. She's very outspoken, and I think that people are going to relate to her, and people are going to take note of the passion that she has when she speaks. I'm here with Jenn Watts of the Watts Change Agency and Watts of Change podcast, right?
That's correct.
You just launched it
Yes.
recently.
Yeah, I launched it on Friday.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I've listened to it, and it's good.
Thank you.
That first episode is you learn a lot about Jenn Watts.
That's exactly what I was trying to accomplish.
Yeah.
Short, but I had to be short. That was hard.
Yeah, it was like 20-something minutes.
Yes.
It was perfect, though, because it's just you, and you got a lot in, and you addressed some issues that happened recently, and we understand how you feel about it. So, great job.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
What's your goal with the podcast?
Yeah, so, I think that this has been a journey for me over the course of the past 2 years, really thinking about launching a podcast and building a platform for myself.
Yep.
I run, like you mentioned, a consulting firm called Watts Change Agency, and we're really focused on social issues that are what I think some of the most pressing problems for rising generations.
Yep.
And through that consulting firm, I do strategic communications, fundraising, investor relations, program design, and also building campaigns. And so the goal of the podcast for me is really talking about change in a way that, listeners start to think about, if you want to create change in the world, or you're, curious about getting involved in social issues in your community, really the first step to doing that is, clearly volunteering, trying to figure out where you want to get involved, but also taking a hard look at yourself.
Yeah.
And starting to reflect on, why do I want to get involved in social change?
Yep.
Where was that moment in my life when I saw an injustice, whether that was in childhood or, when you're growing up as a teenager or as a young adult or in midlife adult life? When did I see a moment in my life where I realized an injustice existed?
Yep.
And why am I called to do that work? And so with my podcast, I wanted to tell, my personal story on some of the injustices I experienced when I was a little girl and how that played into who I am today.
Yep.
And how that plays into my work and my business.
Yep. And you're from Indiana, right?
I am from Indiana.
Yeah.
I'm from the East Side.
Oh, okay.
East Side for life. Right at 10th and Emerson.
Okay.
I grew up in a sort of a working class Irish Catholic community.
Okay.
And, it's like what I talk about on my first episode, a socially conservative Catholic family on both sides of my family. And so there was a lot of reckoning to understand what that meant.
Yeah. How did you, so you talk about being socially conservative, and you are not socially conservative.
I am not.
But where did that come from? Did it come from your experiences, or did it come from education?
That's a great question. I think that I've gone through a process to figure out that. Growing up in a Catholic school and a Catholic family, I was definitely expected to, live a certain life, and I think hit certain milestones in our religion. Like marriage, being very conscious of, as we're talking right now about Roe versus Wade, what does pro-life mean? And, waiting till I was married to have sex, all of those values that I was taught. I think I always just kind of questioned that growing up. And I think I really had my political awakening when I went to Fordham University in New York City
Right.
in the Bronx, which was incredible.
Had to be hella diverse, right?
It was so diverse. It was beautiful.
Mhm.
And I remember just going from small rural town Indiana, which is another part of my journey. I actually moved to Martinsville, Indiana for high school.
Oh boy.
Which we
Like
can talk
people,
about.
like the people who don't know, that are not like everybody's not from Indiana who listen to this podcast.
Okay.
Can you just explain Martinsville?
I will. And first I'll start out by saying there are some incredible individuals in
Yes,
Martinsville.
I have friends from Martin. Well, I don't know if they're from. They live in Martinsville. I have friends that live there. I'm just going to tell you, when I first moved to Indiana, I was told not to go to Martinsville.
Yeah.
Like literally, people who lived here told me, "Don't go to Martinsville."
That was probably good advice. The history of Martinsville is very deep, and trigger warning. It was definitely home for some of the most powerful members of the KKK, both in Indiana and nationally. And actually, in the 70s, there was a murder on the town square of a Black woman selling encyclopedias.
Wow.
And she was murdered on the town square in the 70s.
Wow.
And so this town has sort of a relentless reputation of being racist.
Yeah.
And I went to high school there.
Dang.
And so that was a extremely different experience from going to school in the east side of Indianapolis and where I grew up. And then moving down south, my father moved us there sort of outside of Martinsville in a suburb, but we still went to Martinsville as the feeder school.
Yep.
And also I went from Catholic school to public school, and just going from, some diversity in my Catholic school, which frankly there wasn't much,
Right.
to one race
Wow.
at Martinsville High School was I would say a tough experience for me. And that also goes into my story of, coming from the east side of Indianapolis to a small town in Indiana and just really trying to understand, like, what is going on, and not, again, feeling awkward, feeling uncomfortable, and not seeing the diversity I wish I would have seen.
Yeah.
And I actually, freshman year when I went to high school there was an incident that became national news. There was a basketball game.
The Bloomington North game, right?
Bloomington North game. Where parents and allegedly some of the players were saying racial slurs to some of the other players from Bloomington North.
Yeah.
And I was part of a movement at the high school to actually talk about diversity issues. And I remember we were wearing T-shirts that said, be the exception to the perception. And we had like racism crossed out.
Yep.
So there was a bunch of students who tried to organize ourselves to bring in, anyone, a teacher, a spokesperson.
How
to talk
accepted
about
was that?
Not really.
Yeah, because
accepted.
I know people from the Bloomington North side, and I've never heard that they had people on Martinsville side that was on their side. Like I'd never heard that.
We were kind of selectively silenced, I think, in many ways. The group that was bubbling and organizing ourselves, and it was actually the newspaper. I was part of the newspaper in high school.
Okay.
And there were some of us there just trying to organize and get a different perspective.
Yep.
And actually, Congresswoman Julia Carson came down to Martinsville and spoke to our entire student body about diversity and racism at the time. And I remember just sitting there wearing my T-shirt, like, yes, Congresswoman, like, and that was my first real experience.
Was she well accepted?
She
well
actually
received?
was. Yeah. I'm sure there was some silent individuals and that didn't like what was going on. And I also want to say that they were high school students.
Right.
So in many ways, they were probably a reflection of what was going on at home
parents,
or their parents
right.
versus they didn't even understand what their belief system was.
Absolutely.
And so
They're just doing what they were taught.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And, I always remind people when I was out in Washington, D.C. and New York, when I was, understanding how to be a good activist, I would remind a lot of individuals who like constantly, I don't understand these people. I don't understand rural America. Why do people think like this? The reality is you're talking about individuals who their only trip maybe for the week is going to a Shell gas station twice a week to get some of the basic needs because it's the closest store to their house.
Right.
They're in rural America. They're on farms. They are not exposed to any other culture but themselves.
Yep.
And so how we build, going back to education, how we start thinking about building curriculum where we can introduce to young people, we're talking, I don't want to get into CRT, but,
Yeah, I know.
how do we do that? How do we build that movement
Yep.
and allow students to understand different cultures and different races and diversity
Yep.
in their curriculum? And the most important thing for that is getting their superintendents to buy into that and accept it, which is a
Yep.
whole other issue.
Yeah, it is another issue because the more south you get with the school districts, the more rural it is in the way they think.
Yes.
So the superintendent shares the same views as everybody else.
Very true. It's very true. And, I think I will say, outside of Indianapolis, when we really start to think about the political mentality that goes on in our state, that's truly where the power lies. That a lot of these elected officials, they, frankly, I hate to say it, don't really care about the urban areas like Indy, like Bloomington, like Gary. They know who their constituents are.
Right.
And that's who they're talking to.
Yep.
So it's an ingrained mentality that I think we have to just keep going at from all angles.
So how do you change those mindsets? How do you get people to buy into diversity? Because what I've learned in my time is that a lot of people who have a closed mind, that mind opens when they're exposed to diversity.
Yes.
It almost always happens.
Yes.
A lot. And when you have a closed mind and there is no other perspective to bring in to battle it, what else do you have? But what you have is tradition or whatever you've been thinking all your life.
Absolutely.
So what do you think? Like, how can you change these minds, or at least not even change? Now you don't want to change their mind. You want to give them the opportunity to see another perspective and then make a choice after that.
Right. This is a really tough issue, and I mean, just personally, I've gone through my own, I keep saying the word transition, but truly transition on understanding my own racisms. And my being a white woman, and even though I come from the working class, I'm still extremely privileged.
Yeah.
And I've had the fortunate opportunity to go to colleges like Fordham University and become a community organizer and get involved in DEI trainings, and really get pushed from some of my best friends who are Black or Latinx and who have pushed me on my own thinking. And I feel very fortunate. And frankly, I have a lot more work to do. I'll never be done. You'll never be done, trying to understand your mentality and your privileges for me as a white woman. And I think that it's, for someone to change their mentality on the issue of racism. I think one, what you said is correct. You have to keep exposing people to diversity.
Mm-hmm.
And I think in many ways, you have to do it in baby steps. Me as an ally, to the Black Lives Matter movement, as an ally to the Indiana Racial Justice Alliance, who Matt Davis is a leader there who I love and work beside on voting rights issues. I know if I have had this opportunity to, educate myself and be around diverse communities and have, friends of all races, dating of all races. I always say that I'm like the UN when it comes to dating, like whatever. But like when I've exposed myself to that, I know that I have to bring others with me.
Yep.
And I used to think that meant, posting these memes or graphics about equality and, showing how I am just so woke.
Yeah.
But then I realized I'm just talking to my own bubble.
Right.
So for me, it is like, who are my friends at Martinsville who are like curious?
Yeah.
Who are really curious about other cultures and other races. And they see me on my platform talking about it. And they reached out to me through DMs or through emails or texts and say, Jenn, I really love what you're talking about. And I want to have a conversation with you.
Yep.
Most of them are white suburban women who are interested. And also white men who are farmers.
Yeah.
And I take time out of my day to have a conversation with them or invite them to listen to the podcast, invite them to come to, an event and slowly have conversations with them.
Yep.
And I think that when you're an organizer, it's that one-on-one that matters most.
Yep.
And so that again goes back to my podcast, that really it's that pushing people to say, when was that moment you saw an injustice? Like, were you watching a movie and did something pop out to you and you're like, wait, that's not okay?
You're right.
And really get personal with them.
Okay. You worked with former President Barack Obama.
Yes, I did.
One of my favorite guys.
Yeah, same.
But can you tell us a little bit about your experience there? How did you get on his campaign? How did you start working for Barack Obama?
Yeah, this is actually a great story. So I went to college at Fordham University in the Bronx.
Yep.
Where let me just J-Lo was my she was everything I wanted to be in college. And she was everywhere in the Bronx.
Yeah.
And I was like, I'm Jenny from the block too. And just I had an amazing experience there. And so when I was at Fordham, I just was exposed to so many different issues. And particularly my undergraduate degree was in urban studies and philosophy. And part of my urban studies degree, I had to do an internship in the Bronx.
Okay.
And so I actually was a teacher's assistant as my internship at a charter high school called CUNY Prep in the South Bronx. And I got, I was an English TA, and that went really well. And then I became a math TA, and I got really close to a couple of the students there. I really just became super passionate about them, concerned about them. Both of them, they were two teenage boys. I think they were 14 and 15. They were just got out of Rikers. And they had been mandated that they had to do a community service program as part of their probation. And so we created a program at this high school about organizing and community organizing and social justice issues, which was part of my class at Fordham University.
Yep.
And really, I worked with some really talented teachers and activists in the education system there in the Bronx to come up with this program. And we, as I was working with these students, we got super passionate about the Rockefeller drug laws.
Okay.
So what it came down to was, these young men were selling drugs in the Bronx. They got arrested. They were also involved in gangs. Their homes were broken. They lived in some of the most impoverished communities in our country in the South Bronx, and they didn't have a support system.
Yep.
So essentially, that program became an outlet for them. The anger that they had,
Mm-hmm.
and they put it into the streets, they put it into organizing, and they learned how to organize.
Wow.
That transformed me completely. Again, white girl who is from Indiana, from Martinsville.
Yeah.
How did I connect with these boys? Frankly, it was humor. They were calling me out a lot on different things, like, yo, Miss Watts, why you put me on blast? And I'd be like, what is blast? And they thought it was hysterical.
Right.
And I was like, teach me
Yeah.
this culture.
Right.
Because I need to understand it.
Mhm.
I don't know. I grew up in Indiana. And
Yeah.
so use that as a bargaining chip with them. And
Yep.
they love that.
Right,
This
right.
girl from Indiana, doesn't she think she likes J-Lo? We're going to show her where
Right.
J-Lo was born. And
they can sense sincerity
yes.
a mile away. Like they know when you're not sincere.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And so I think using my vulnerability and being naive to urban culture was my gateway into learning and me admitting I don't know these things.
Yeah.
And I may say some stuff that's fucked up, excuse
Yeah.
my language,
Yeah.
and they would check me on it.
Yep.
And so they became my teachers.
Yep.
So I got involved in community organizing, and through that process, passionate about what it meant to be a community organizer. Went through some national trainings with the Midwest. I always get it wrong. The Midwest Organizing Academy, which is one of the academies that is in Chicago, and Barack Obama was involved in. But long story short, when I graduated of Fordham, I had the opportunity to actually work at the Clinton Foundation in Harlem, which was a whole other side of the story. And so when I was working at the Clinton Foundation, I actually saw Barack Obama speak on a panel and read his book, Dreams of My Father,
Yep.
as well as The Audacity of Hope.
Yep.
And I learned he was a community organizer. And I was like, this guy is awesome.
Right.
He's the real deal. I need to work for him.
Mhm.
So I literally cold called his office while I was working for the Clintons
Okay.
when Hillary Clinton was getting ready to run.
Yep.
And an intern, who cold calls an office? No one does
You
that
do.
anymore.
You do.
And I tell people, I literally cold called Barack Obama's office. So it does work. An intern answered, and I said, I'm interested in working on Barack Obama's presidential campaign. Can you direct me to the right person? They were like, well, there's this guy named Reggie Love who is collecting names and talent for the campaign. I'll connect you to him. And I don't know if you know Reggie Love.
I've heard the name.
He was his body man. He was a Duke basketball player.
Yep.
And so I was like, okay, cool. And so of course I started stalking Reggie Love. And I'm like, who is this man? First of all, he's beautiful. So I was like, how am I going to connect with him? I can't. I'm awkward. And so and he knows I'm awkward and whatever. And, I found out who he was. And actually one of my friends played volleyball at Western Kentucky and was really good friends with some of the basketball players who played with him at Duke.
Okay.
So she kind of worked her way backward. I worked my way forward with him. And he was like, okay. And I kind of stalked him down. He's like, all right, I'll have coffee with you. And so I ended up getting on a train from New York and DC and met with him. And immediately we gelled, we connected. We had a great interview. And he called me the next day and was like, we want to hire you. Can you move to Washington?
Nice.
And so I packed my bags in New York. I told my family I was moving. I broke up with my boyfriend at the time. It was sad. And got on a train, moved to Washington, D.C., and started working with Reggie in the beginning and also the fundraising team as well.
Yep.
And
where was Obama in his political career at this point?
He was a state senator at the time. So he was a senator and had an office in D.C., and because of campaign law, when you're running a campaign, you have to set up an office, a separate office from your Senate office, because you can't use taxpayer dollars to run for office. You have to set up a whole other operation. So his office was this tiny room that was frankly the size of this room, across, I remember, on top of a Subway. So the entire office smelled like Subway.
Wow.
And to this day, I cannot go into Subway. I literally I can't. I spent so much time there. And there was peanut shells, and there was the Chicago White Sox poster, and there was one campaign poster he had up, and I was and I was coming from the Clinton world.
Yep.
And
way
that's a
more
whole other
money.
thing. I was like, we're gonna get murdered.
Right.
I was like, we don't have a chance. And they were like, is she a spy? Is she gonna tell Hillary? I'm like, bro, I'm 22. I'm not on their high radar of the Clinton Foundation.
Right.
But knowing the operation the Clintons had to this peanut gallery that I was walking into anyone who's listening, God bless. But I was a peanut gallery at the Barack Obama campaign office, scrappy as hell. I was like, we're not going to win.
Right.
But we outraised her. We outraised her in the first quarter of the campaign. People were sneaking over to our office, and the depths of the nights, they didn't see that they were going to support Barack Obama versus Hillary Clinton.
Wow.
And I never worked harder in my life to raise that much money.
Good.
And I can't remember the direct amount of money, but we outraised her by a few times, and everyone was like, okay, this is legit.
Yeah.
He has a chance.
Wow.
And it was just, from then on, it was just kind of an unbelievable experience that nothing will match that.
What did you learn from that experience?
What did I learn? So, one, I think I was not really prepared. And I think about this a lot. I really wasn't prepared what it was like for a Black man to run for office in our country.
Right.
And I think, in his immediate team and his advisors who were with him from the beginning, just learning from them the challenges we were going to be up against in rural America and places like Iowa, and just listening to those conversations that they were having. I was just, I certainly wasn't prepared for what we were up against.
Yeah.
I also learned that, he had a rule, and everyone knows this. It was a no drama Obama, where he was just so focused that when he came into a room and he was ready to do call time or prepare for one of his speeches, he didn't want any drama in that room with him.
No drama.
No drama. Anyone who came into that room that was frantic or just made him nervous, I was like, okay, you got to leave. You got to go get yourself together, man. There's no drama in this room.
No drama.
So that was actually something I took away, was how to be cool and calm at all times, and how to get super focused under pressure.
Yep.
I learned that from him.
Okay.
Which was really awesome. And I think I also learned that I could push myself harder than I ever thought I could, working around the clock and knocking on doors and, pitching Barack Obama to rural farmers in places like Indiana and Iowa,
Yeah.
and represent someone and being a diplomat and doing the work for them, knowing that I would be accepted in some circles that Barack Obama wasn't accepted in.
Right.
And so I was, as an organizer, kind of like a mini diplomat for him,
Yeah.
which was awesome.
And you were 22?
I was probably 23 when I started, and I went to Iowa when I was 24. So yeah, it was some of
That's
my
impressive.
fundamental years.
Yeah, that's impressive.
Thank you.
And then can we talk about the Watch Change agency?
Yes.
What drove you to start the agency?
And this is funny because it goes back to politics. One of the things when you are working for a politician and you're in Washington working for the Clintons, and basically your hands are tied and you can't really talk about your personal opinions. You're representing an elected official at that point. You're representing the American people at that point. And so your personal opinions, and I worked in the White House. I actually had to shut down all my social media when I was in the White House.
Dang.
You can't have really a personal opinion because that's reflective of the administration or the politician.
Right.
And even when I moved back to Indiana, my first job here was working for the Department of Education for Dr. McCormick, actually the Republicans.
Yeah.
Which was actually an incredible experience. And I couldn't really have my opinion then. And I think starting my own company was me saying, I have my own opinion. I want to talk about issues I care about. I want to work on issues I care about. I want to, be open and unhinged to take on issues I want to take on and be my own boss.
Yep.
And so for me, when I started Watts Change Agency, I wanted to take all the experience I had working nationally and also internationally and really be who I want to be and be my own boss. And that was really important to me.
Nice. So how do you figure out what you want to tackle? What do you want to go after? How do you pick that?
That's a really good question. I think, I've had a lot of great business coaches as I started this company. I've had a lot of great mentors who I look up to who are running some very successful social impact firms. And I think for me, what I hope to achieve is that I find and support local entrepreneurs, local, social visionaries here in Indy and in Indiana, and then amplify the work they're doing nationally and connect them to my national network. And so when I was trying to decide what issues to take on, I really was just trying to find leaders I believed in here in Indy.
Yeah.
And when I found those leaders, I then was like, I'm going to support whatever social issue you're taking on.
Okay.
So my first clients, so some of my clients now are After School HQ. They're run by Daria Henry and San Pathaik, and he's going to kill me because I didn't pronounce that right. They are incredible. They're
What do they do?
technologists. So they have started a platform, and they just got a huge contract with IPS where they are streamlining after-school programming and making it easier for parents to sign up for after-school programming for their kids by building this platform where we can, they are essentially finding all of the after-school programming that exists in the city and putting it into one platform.
Mm-hmm.
Believe it or not, that doesn't exist.
Wow. Yeah.
Because most of the time when we find out about our kids' after-school programming, it's with a flyer that's in their backpack, which is crumpled up, or on a Facebook group where parents are talking about it. So he's trying to democratize after-school programming and allow parents just to go onto one platform, click, and find the programs.
Yep.
So he's eliminating that barrier just to sign up.
Yep.
I also work with the organization Common Cause Indiana, which is all about voting rights and democracy. And the executive director of that organization is Julia Vaughn. And I met her at a training once in Chicago, and she's relentless. She calls out both parties.
Yeah.
She has no allegiance. Her allegiance is democracy and
Right.
voting rights.
Yep.
And she is relentless about it. And so any way that I can support that organization, and Common Cause has been around since the 70s. They were actually one of the leading organizations to hold President Nixon accountable for some of Watergate, his corruption.
Yep.
So I love working with them.
Yep.
Also, one of my clients is Start Ed Up Foundation. They're focused on entrepreneurship and bringing curriculum about entrepreneurship into schools and teaching students how to be entrepreneurs and run their own businesses,
Yep.
which is huge and very critical, especially post-COVID. I also have an international client called the Open Government Partnership,
Yeah.
which is focused on opening governments around the world to citizens and empowering citizens to get involved in issues like voting rights is one of them, rule of law, justice reform around the world. So I've talked to activists like in Morocco and Venezuela and lots
Man.
of countries
Wow.
that are not doing so well in democracy.
Yeah.
And I also just signed React Indie, which is actually a really cool organization that is a theater organization where
Okay.
it teaches young people, who want to be actors, and actually teaches young people how to write their own plays around social justice issues.
Oh, dope.
And so one of their flagship productions is called Love Overdose, and it's about the opioid crisis in Indiana. And high school students put this on and sort of learn about the opioid crisis by developing this play.
Yep.
And the other one is 91 Place. They focused on youth and homelessness, which is an incredible organization that's doing some great work. And
That sounds dope.
yeah, so those are my starting clients.
You're busy.
I'm busy.
Dang. You just named like 5 organizations.
Yeah.
And you knew all about them. That's super dope.
Trying.
Well, it speaks a lot about you and about how passionate you are about it, that you can just go down the line and say what they are and what they're about.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you.
that's really good.
Thank you.
Along your way, what has been some great advice that you've been given to stay focused and stay on the path? Like what helps you stay driven?
I think that it comes back to it comes back to my childhood. And I think, I talk a little of this in my podcast, but definitely had some traumas within my own childhood. One in particular, my parents got a divorce when I was 10. And one of the main driving factors in that, and, my mom's okay talking, about me talking about this, like she really struggled with mental health issues. And she's doing great now.
Yeah.
She's absolutely doing great.
Good.
Well, she was married with my dad. She wasn't doing great. And I understand that. But I think that knowing that my mom didn't have the supports around her that she could have had to be a resilient mother. And my dad actually got custody of us, which was rare in the 90s. I mean, that I was raised by a single father, which is a whole other episode.
Yeah.
I go back to that. I go back to how angry I was that I didn't have the relationship with my mother that I wish I would have had.
Mm-hmm.
And that anger fuels my focus.
Okay.
It fuels my focus that there are systems that are not set up for success for mothers, for parents, for children, and for children to be ripped apart from their parents because of mental health is just unacceptable. So how are we building wraparound supports to support young people so that they can still thrive even if their parents aren't able to?
Yep.
That keeps me focused and driven.
Mm-hmm.
I think discipline. I was an athlete growing up, and I was involved in a lot of sports in high school, and I think I learned discipline sort of through sports.
Yep.
And that focus has helped me remain disciplined. And I think it's also community, that I challenge myself by being around others, and I'm able to plug into communities that are doing the work.
Yeah.
And they hold me accountable to do the work.
Yeah.
So, that's what it is. It's focus, community, and that anger that I held on to as a child, and just doing something healthy to get rid of that.
But also you seem like you're very intentional with what you want to do. Like you make it a point to seem very intentional.
Thank you. I do. I am. I think sometimes to my detriment, I overanalyze things. But I definitely won't commit myself to anyone if I don't think I can do it.
Yeah.
And saying no and setting boundaries has been a new lesson for me.
Saying no?
Saying
so
no.
So you say yes a lot.
I do say yes a lot.
That's my new mantra though. Like I said no too much. Now I say yes all the time, but now I'm learning that I should say no.
Exactly. Well, I don't want to turn this interview about you, but you definitely just shared some
Yeah.
things with me about your commitment
Yeah.
to, staying focused. What helps
Yeah.
you stay focused?
What helps me?
Yeah.
The fact that I know that my perspective could probably change someone's mindset or help someone to cope with something or learn or want to learn more.
Yeah.
The fact that the conversations that I have or I'm willing to have are not being had drives me.
Yes.
That's what drives me. And I'm in a state where these conversations need to be had all the time.
Amen to that.
Yeah.
Amen to
And
that.
I mean, I have people in my life from this state that inspire me to continue to fight and continue the conversations because they've asked me questions that they don't feel safe asking someone else. So that drives me. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yep.
That's awesome. That's why I'm here, because I think that, I've been watching your podcast and analyzing, of course, before I commit to something. And I was like, you have the right message and you're bringing on the right guests.
Oh, thanks.
And I think that when you have a platform and you have people around the country listening to you, shedding light on a state like Indiana is so critical.
It is. Like what you say, how you say it, and how it's delivered is very important.
Yes.
because how it's received is very important as well here.
Yes. Yes.
The message has to come very packaged very prettily for them to even want to listen to it.
That is right. That is right. And that's
I think I have allowed myself to become this package that people are willing to listen to. That's what happened.
That's so important. That's so important. And I think you have to keep going, and you can't let anyone silence you and that's the beauty about podcasting, right? Is that you have a voice and you can build a platform and no one's silencing you.
Yep.
And I think, people need that here. Yep. And I appreciate what you're doing.
Well, I really appreciate you and all the work that you've tread up to this point too, and continue to do. It's commendable to have allies like yourself.
Thank you.
But recently, we've gotten news of Roe v. Wade being overturned. And you put in a lot of work with that. Like the past few days, I've seen you post so much stuff.
Yeah.
My question to you is a personal question from me to you. Like, as a male, I have conversations all the time since it happened, right? With men, women, different people. But I want to know, what is your advice to a man, myself? Like, what is your advice to me on how I can be an ally?
So, well, first, thank you for saying that, because I don't think enough men are saying that. And it's not man-hating or man-shaming. I think it's confusing. Yeah. I think that men are like, wait, what is my voice in this place, in this movement? Should I or should I not step in? And I think, my advice is listen. Yeah. Listen and hear out both sides of the argument. But also I want to say that, as much as I'm an advocate with women, this is a women's fight. And women right now should be the lead, and they should be the voice, because they don't have that voice on a day-to-day. Yeah. I think that men are part of this decision as well. If you are trying to decide if you want to keep a pregnancy or not, whether it's your wife, whether it's your girlfriend, or whether it's just a one-night stand at a bar, whatever, you have a choice in the matter too. Yeah. But ultimately, when it comes to the procedure and it comes to the mental anguish of that physical piece that women go through, if they decide to get an abortion, it is a woman's journey. And I think in order to be a good ally as a male, it's listening, supporting, and hearing women out. But then if you find it in your heart that you know what, I believe that women should have the choice. And I believe it's not a politician's right or a faith's right to tell a woman what to do with their body. I think also amplifying and talking about it and supporting the activists right now who are working so hard across the country to prevent their choice being eliminated. Certainly Indiana's on the chopping block right now. Governor Holcomb has called a special session on July 6th and frankly, we know, I think this will be on the agenda.
Yeah.
A lot of organizations are calling for it not to be. And Governor Holcomb's come out publicly that he is pro-life.
Yeah.
I think as an ally in this movement, you can stand up and say, you know what, I don't think it's right that we as men are making decisions on behalf of women.
Right.
And so that would be my advice: listening and amplifying.
Yep. I think men, when I'm having conversations, they feel like they want to have a voice, and they don't actually know the stance they should take or how loud they should be in this fight that women have to have themselves.
Yeah.
Like this is a woman's fight. It is. And I think that men should support whatever side they feel, they should support it. But I was telling Angelo earlier that I think that this is the one time where women should be the only ones to vote. If women were the only ones that voted on abortion,
yeah,
I would support whatever won.
That's amazing. Well, you are rare.
Well, I mean, personally, me, if I'm against abortion, I could still be pro-choice.
Absolutely.
And that's the same for women. Like you can say that you'll never have an abortion, you'll never support abortion, but you still have the feeling that the choice is available.
Absolutely.
I don't know why I don't even know why that's an argument.
That is what I think the pro-choice movement is actually calling upon, is that, I grew up, an example for me is I grew up in like I said, socially conservative Catholic family where I grew up in a pro-life household and a pro-life Thanksgiving dinner table or whatever. And if I remember trying to raise the issue to my grandmother and at the dinner table once that, and I said the word, if I would have an abortion, if I was pregnant and I didn't want that child, again, no, everyone just couldn't believe I said it at Thanksgiving.
Right.
But the reality is, I certainly, if you are pro-life and if you believe that moment where, the sperm hits the egg, that's a living, that's a human, that's one thing. But having the government or having a faith or having an institution make a decision for you is where the issue lies.
Right.
So you can still be pro-life and not want government intervention in this decision.
Yep.
And I think that message gets convoluted in the argument. And I think there are a lot of men who are on that side. And frankly, there's a lot of Republican male representatives who are pro-choice that won't make a public statement about it.
Right.
But there's a lot of men who agree with you. There's
also a lot of pro-life people that have paid for abortions.
Amen to that. Amen to that.
And will continue.
Yes.
I don't know. It's just messed up.
And I know what you're saying. There are some men who've been in situations who are pro-life and was, on the slide, paid for an abortion, didn't tell anyone, and they've kept that in their soul.
Yeah.
And they're never going to tell anyone, but they did it because they didn't want to have a baby.
Yeah.
And, I wish, and that's what my podcast is about, how can we be authentic and honest, and how, we shouldn't ever feel like we have to hide this thing that we did.
Yeah.
We were in the moment. We're humans. We make mistakes. No one's perfect. It's a journey. So the fact that you don't feel comfortable enough to talk about that's not okay. But also, you don't have to talk about it. Right? You can, and that's the whole debate. You can be private about what happened.
Right. But we're forced to choose a side in this country right now. We're forced to choose a side on so many things that I am 100% for that person who is lying about being pro-life and paying for an abortion, their privacy.
Mm-hmm.
I'm for their privacy.
Absolutely.
I don't have it. It's none of my business to know that he paid for an abortion.
Right.
And his girlfriend or whoever had an abortion. That's not my business. And that's the right that I think we're trying to protect, really, for everybody.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I mentioned that on my first episode of my podcast. It's, when I walk into my doctor's office and they close that door, anything that goes on between me and my doctor is between me and my doctor. And it is private, and it should be private.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I think the activists are holding on to, that privacy for men and women. If you have to make a choice, that's your choice. No one else needs to know about it.
I agree 100%. Okay, where do you see the Watts Change Agency in the next 5 years? Like, what is your dream for your agency?
So this is a great question. I've started a couple. I've started a company. I've started a couple organizations, and I was really exposed to investor relations and fundraising and what it takes to get the upfront investment in your business to be sustainable. And so in my dream, a Watts Change Agency, there's an amazing investor out there, but that I can get some upfront coin to allow my
That can happen.
I'm trying, baby.
That can happen. That can happen.
I know, and I think I'm in that processing right now. Like, is this what I'm going to do for 5 years?
Yeah.
And if I do make that decision, as you know, I analyze everything. I'm going to go hard at different investors to invest in sort of a social impact, social communications agency. And what I'd love to do, my dream, is to have a national company where I have different hubs around the country that are working for Watts Change Agency on different local issues.
Oh.
And that we all come together and we can amplify the same message.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that it is possible. And I've seen people who I've worked with in Washington build big companies out before. And really help some of our local visionaries build their dream sort of social issue organizations or companies and become amplifying voices as a whole to push issues of change forward.
Okay.
That's my dream. I also have a dream, a side hustle dream, where I'm thinking about building an online school, which is a whole other conversation.
Like an online school where you learn from home, like an e-learning school.
Yes.
Oh, wow.
I have a dream.
That's pretty visionary. I mean, it's weird that doesn't exist.
Well, and there are online schools, and I have a dream about building, and I've had experience in education, and I've worked with some organizations here locally to think about building schools. But I do have a dream that I want to disrupt our school system to a point that is meeting the modern family.
Yeah.
And the modern family doesn't want to be tied down to a school district.
Right.
How many of us are like, I'm going to move to Carmel or I'm
Right.
going to move to Westfield
Right.
because I'm going to go to the school systems.
Yep.
Do I really want to live in Westfield? No offense. I mean, great places to live, but for me, diversity is a value for me.
Right.
So I would love the opportunity to have my daughter learn from anywhere.
Right.
And so how do we build high quality online schools where the more mobile family that's traveling around the world can have their child learn from anywhere and build out hubs around the country and around the globe where they can learn from that hub, kind of like the co-working of e-learning. And they now are living sort of this hub hybrid education experience. So that is something I'm sort of working on the side.
That's a huge on the side thing to be doing.
It is. So I think right now I'm in a point where Watts Change Agency is definitely successful. I have to turn down business. A lot of my coaches are like, when you're turning down business in year 2, that's a good sign.
Yeah.
And so how do I build off that, but then also incubate a concept of like disrupting education?
Yep.
So that's kind of where I'm at.
I think you'll do it all.
Thank you. I hope.
But you sound so busy. What do you do when you want to have fun? Like where do you find time to have fun?
That's a really good question. I love to dance and I love EDM music. I love music. I love hip hop. I love it all. So a lot of times I go out and dance. I think I might have seen you maybe
Not
once
dancing.
or twice. Maybe at the patron saint, maybe.
I wasn't dancing.
You probably weren't dancing. You're probably hanging out.
Yeah, I do go to the Saint. Shout out Brandy.
Yes, I love
Slater,
her.
yeah, Slater.
Slater
Yep.
and John, they're
Yep.
really
Yeah,
trying.
Those that's fam right there.
Yes,
Yep.
yes, they've built. They're. It's great.
Yeah, with the Saint Shack and Patron Saint, they're doing really well.
Yeah. So like, dancing is a huge thing for me.
Okay.
I like to go. I'm a big foodie. I love to go to restaurants and
Okay.
I love eating.
What's your favorite restaurant in Indy?
Oh God, that's a hard question. Root and Bone.
Oh, Root and Bone. I like Root and Bone.
It's a good one. I'm a loyal customer to them.
Yeah. Yeah.
What about you?
Huge fan of Livery.
Oh, okay. Yes.
I like Livery really good. What's our spot? No, Oakmont. I love the Oakmont.
Oh yes.
Oakmont is
Brunches.
that's one of my favorite hangouts. and then flat water.
That's a good one.
I love flat water. Those three, I'm good.
Yes.
Oakmont, Livery, flat water. Shout out. Go ahead, give me a free meal.
100%.
Man, what? So you didn't name yours?
Okay, so 3. Root and Bone. No, oh God. The Oakmont, I go to the Oakmont because it's right by my office building,
Okay.
which is great.
Yep.
God, what's my other one?
Oh, I like salt too.
That's
salt is super good.
Good. I love seafood,
Yeah.
oysters, all of it.
I don't like oysters, but I like salt. Salt is their desserts are good. Good.
Yes.
Yeah.
I also always go to the garden table.
I like the garden table. Yeah.
The juices.
Too. Yeah.
Juice person.
I can't. We just had today Cholitas.
Okay.
Dope tacos. Good tacos.
Which one did you get?
I had the barbecue and I had the what's that one? El Pastor.
Oh, I love El Pastor.
That's the one with the pineapple.
So good. Yes.
Oh,
and they have good margaritas.
they do. I had a blackberry margarita and a peach.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice. And a little
Cholita.
spicy.
Okay. Your podcast. I want to talk about your podcast now.
Okay.
Are you going to have guests on it? Because on your first episode, you did not have guests.
Yes.
It was all Jenn all the time.
It was.
Yeah.
It was. I had to lay a foundation on myself and the vision. But I am going to have guests.
Yeah.
I have a lot of really cool guests I'm bringing on. Don't want to mention them yet.
Yeah. Okay.
But I am going to be calling on some folks from my network.
Yep.
And I am going to have Reggie Love on.
Okay. Good.
He is already committed.
Okay,
and
cool.
I will. But now it's really going to hold him accountable.
Reggie Love.
But I'm going to have him on. I'm going to talk about his experience working for Barack and
Yep.
why he hired me. And
Yep.
it's,
That'll be a good story.
it'll be
to hear.
good. It'll be good. I'm going to bring on some guests who are working in some of our country's best business schools right now to talk about entrepreneurship and running a business. And is your MBA necessary? That's
okay.
a big topic I want to talk about.
Yep.
I'm going to bring in all of my clients
Okay.
and let them have a platform and talk about the issues they're working on.
Yep.
I'm actually going to bring my therapist on.
Oh.
We're going to talk about mental health.
But they're not going to talk
like
about
that.
you.
No, I'm not going to. Good God.
They're going to let it all out on their podcast.
Let's go back to your trauma, Jenn, and tell the world. No, I'm not going to do that. But I am going to have.
But that's a good guest to have to talk about mental health. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
I haven't had a therapist on yet. That might be something I need to
It's important.
dive into.
It's important, especially men's mental health. Talking about it, being honest about it.
I need some help. I
Hey.
need help.
I love that you're honest about it. I think that
definitely need some help.
that's a great quality. And I
Yeah.
think, and I'm also going to be talking about relationships. Like I mentioned, like I went through a divorce recently and
Yeah.
I'm just I've been, dipping my
How long
toe
were you
into the
married?
dating. So I was with my ex-husband for 12 years.
Okay.
We were married for 8 and together for 10.
Okay.
And he's a great person.
Yeah.
He's military. He does military intelligence work. I met him in DC.
Yep.
And it was very difficult being married to an intelligence officer.
I'm sure.
Kind of leave it at that.
Yep.
I was essentially a military wife, which is a whole other discussion in
Yep.
many ways. And
Mhm.
so when the Pentagon called, that
Yeah,
was it.
yeah.
Yep.
Yep.
And when you're working for the Pentagon, you can't have your phone on you. You can't have
Dang,
anything on you.
That's crazy.
So, if our daughter was sick, I'd have to call a bat phone and be like, can you get a hold of my husband wherever
Wow.
he is? Because my daughter has a temperature. But we've worked things out and we're excellent co-parents now. And
That's
that's
important. Yeah, that's very
Yes.
important.
So important.
Yeah.
But relationships, I want to talk to I want to bring someone to talk about dating.
Okay.
I need a dating coach.
You don't know how to date?
I don't. I fail miserably. I mean, I've dated. It's been fun, but I just think I still.
What do you think?
I
What do
don't
you think you're doing wrong?
I think my expectations are just. I don't want to say hot. They're just skewed.
Hmm.
Especially when you start dating in midlife, man. Like you got to have a little bit more realistic about what's out there.
I don't know about that.
I
I think you can still get what you want.
I
You
hope.
just have to be patient. You can't force the issue.
That's right.
You just have to be patient. I think that it's not. You don't. Your interpretation of what you want is not skewed.
That's fair. You're
There's
right.
a lot of people out there.
There is a lot of people. There's a lot of people. I think it's timing.
Are
It's
you
probably-
aggressive?
No, I get
No.
awkward.
Oh.
I mean,
You go after what you want, or you like people to approach you?
I think I used to be aggressive. Now I don't. I want people to approach me.
But then you're not going to get what you want.
I know. It's a mix, right?
Yeah.
It's a mix. It's like a dance you have to do with someone.
Yeah.
I think the hardest thing, and especially when I have 50-50 custody, it's the schedule.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like being able to actually coordinate with
and figure
someone.
out when you don't have your kid and when you are free.
Yeah. And when you're really passionate about your work, I put work, of course, it's like one of my priorities.
Yeah.
So scheduling around that is difficult.
Yeah.
I've dated some really good guys. I mean, I've met some incredible guys here in Indy, and a lot of the times it didn't work out because of schedule.
Oh, yeah.
Which sucks. But
they were
life.
good guys.
Good guys.
Okay.
Good guys.
Yeah. Nothing wrong with that.
Just timing, man. That's the hard part. So yeah, dating is going to talk about, which I can't wait. And I think I'm also going to be talking about music. And a lot, because I'm so passionate about.
Yeah.
And it's helped me through a lot of this transition. And I think I want to bring on some DJs that I love.
Who's your favorite? Okay, let's give your top 3 DJs in Indy.
In Indy?
It's not going to, I can't say because it's not going to be fair.
I know.
I'll never hear the end of it. So I'm going to bow out of this one.
You're putting me on the spot. Okay, so Nick Samaro.
Yep.
Samaro is my favorite.
I just saw Nick Saturday.
Okay.
At the Saint. Yeah.
You're at the Saint.
I was at the Saint Saturday. Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Nick Samaro, I love him.
I love Nick too.
And it's because he's a leader too.
Yeah,
he's helping young talent.
Yeah, he's dope.
So good.
Yep.
Action Jackson. I had to name him.
Ben's my boy.
He is always a professional.
Yeah.
He always delivers.
Ben, my man. I love Ben.
He's so great.
Yep.
And it's and I will say this is the third one's tough. So Becca Brains.
Becca Brains. I don't know Becca Brains.
She's really great.
Yeah.
She it does more, I would say, some deep house music, progressive house.
Yep.
Really good. Brandon Coleman, who he's also called Batman.
I've heard of him, yeah.
Progressive house as well.
I've heard of him, yeah.
And I'm probably getting all that wrong. I'm like, that's not what I play, Jen. I don't know.
You just put me in a box.
Gerald Collins, gotta call out DJ Cadillac.
Caddy.
Love you.
Sleepy G.
So those are some of my favorite right there.
Okay. All right. So you're gonna have one of them on.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Or some. You
Yes.
might have some of them. Okay.
Definitely.
Are you going to have like multiple guests at once, or are you just going to be you?
Okay, so that's a great question. Yeah. I'm still learning technology. I'm still learning. Like this studio is incredible.
It is. Yeah.
I want to have a pipe. I wish I could have it here. Maybe I don't know.
You can.
But I don't. I mean, this is incredible. Your team is pretty awesome.
They are dope. They are dope.
That's huge. But I think I want to. The way that I'm editing it right now, so I'm trying to do some video and some audio.
Yeah.
So I would like right now, because I'm just doing audio, I'm probably going to have to do them separately. But I would love to do a studio like this and have multiple guests on. What is your advice?
I mean, yeah, we can definitely talk about your setup and how you can help it. But I think that you can do video right away, like no problem. Wherever you are, you can do video.
Yeah.
You can also do multiple guests, no problem. It's just whatever you want to do.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you just have to know and have the vision in your head. Whatever you want is possible.
Yeah. And you have been such a champion since I started talking about this. You reached out to me, and I've been, looking at your episodes, and I would love to kind of just have these really cool videos and
it's
teasers.
Very possible, yeah. And it's actually not much work to add it.
That's awesome. I mean, especially now, there's so many platforms you can use.
Yeah.
That is, unlike Riverside, was someone introduced me to that.
We're going to talk. We'll set you up.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Promise?
Yeah, promise.
Yes.
Well, I don't have much. I just have my last question for you. And my last question is, see, I asked my last guest what their favorite podcast that I have done is. I don't know how many you've listened to.
I mean, I've definitely, I was like, as I was getting ready to come here, I was like listening to some. I've listened to some throughout the week.
Yep. Dang, man. Your favorite DJ in Indy would have been a great question. And I would have asked you to pick one.
One?
Yeah.
Nick Samaro.
But, okay, Nick is...
I'm kind of a junkie of Samaro. He knows I'm like the head of the Samaro fan club.
I know.
He's
so cool.
I have his sticker on my phone.
Oh.
Yeah. I recently, I was
I don't
very-
have a sticker.
not, I know. I called him out on social media. Where's my sticker?
Yeah, I don't have a sticker.
I actually, and sorry to go on a tangent, but I actually had a meeting. I went to DC recently. I had a meeting at the White House, and I had my phone up like this.
Yeah.
And one of like the deputy assistant, whatever he was, he came up to me. He goes, "Who's Samaro?" I was just like, "Yes."
Oh, I do have a question
Yes.
for you because you like whiskey, you like bourbon.
Yes, I do.
Yes. So, how did you get into bourbon, and what is your favorite bourbon?
Good question.
Yeah.
So I said I was raised by my father.
Yep.
And part of it, remember my dad told me this at a young age, he ran his own business. He's
Okay.
a serial entrepreneur himself.
Okay.
He ran his own insurance company. He's in real estate. And he's an avid golfer.
Okay.
I also play golf.
Wow.
It's the whole thing. And
How
he's
do you
like,
find time to golf?
it's rare, but when
Okay.
I do, I go all out, man. And
Okay.
I have ladies who golf.
Yep.
That's something Watts Change Agency actually has done fundraisers around golf, and we kind of show up. We actually went to a fundraiser last summer. We were the first women's foursome to
Oh.
be in this fundraiser.
Nice.
It was pretty incredible.
Nice.
But so he always taught me, like, if you want to have a good business and you want to get into politics, so somebody's like, you need to learn about bourbons, scotches, and cigars.
Okay.
And so my dad taught me about bourbon and scotch
Wow.
and cigars. So
Wow.
I go to cigar bars. I do my cigar
Okay.
thing. And actually, I'm not gonna lie, Angel's Envy is one of my favorite.
Ooh.
It is.
Shout out Angels Envy.
Yes.
Jason Faust. You know Jason?
I don't.
Oh man, he's like the man for Angels Envy, and he lives in Indy.
Awesome.
Yeah. So every time I do an event, Angels Envy is a huge sponsor.
Really?
Mhm.
Well, Angel's Envy, drinking you right now.
Shout out Angels Envy.
One of my favorites. And I think so bourbon, when I was out east, I would go to, various bars and bourbon became a thing. And I always felt so proud because I was like, Kentucky,
Yeah.
south of Indiana.
Right,
and
right.
so just really got into it. I think like when I was out in DC and going to a lot of political events.
They drink
drinking
bourbon a lot too.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
More so than scotch, I even think, because it's kind of like a southern thing, you know?
Yeah.
In DC, whether people know it or not, it's got a real southern vibe.
Yeah. For some reason, it's so north.
Yeah.
but I mean, it's the whole country, really.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So that's where I got into bourbon. And it really is my dad, I think, that just introduced me to it.
Okay. Good. So Angels Envy is, you would say, is your
My
favorite.
favorite.
That is dope.
When I saw this, I was like, we're going to get along.
That is dope. Well, I want to thank you for coming, and it was a pleasure meeting you.
Thank you.
It's like we're friends.
We are friends.
We are friends. We've met, but we're not really met.
Right.
You know what I mean? So I'm happy that you came. I'm so happy everybody got to learn your story. I'm a fan.
Thank you.
And if you ever need me for anything, I am available. You can hit me up. You have my number. So hit me up.
Thank you, Stretch. I appreciate that. I
yes.
really do.
Yeah, absolutely.
Same for me. I think you're incredible. Your platform's so important. Everyone in Indy is so proud that you're here. I know you have a huge following, and thank you. Thank you for being here.
No,
we need you.
Thank you. And what about your social medias? Like, how can people get a hold of you, follow your podcast, follow you, Watts Change, all that?
Yes. So I am at Jenn Watts Rocks.
Yep.
So it's 2 N's, Jenn, or Jenn Watts Rocks. Yeah. Jenn Watts Rocks.
Yep.
And then also at Watts Change Agency on Instagram.
Yep.
I'm on Facebook, LinkedIn, all of it. And so that's probably the best way to get a hold of me.
And what about, you have a website too? 'Cause
Yes.
I looked at that.
Thank you. Love that. WattsChangeAgency.com.
Okay, that's easy.
Yes. And my email's there and there's a contact form there. So
Okay.
please get a hold of me. Love to help you.
Hopefully a big investor is be like, man, I really listened to that podcast and I thought it was dope.
I'm here for it. And I'm taking all checks.
I want to thank everyone for listening.